Liars don't just lie with words, they lie with questions. 5 specific questions that sound innocent, but are actually psychological weapons designed to make you doubt yourself, hand over control, and stop trusting your own judgment. The ancient Stoics knew these manipulation tactics 2,000 years ago and developed unshakable responses that expose the liar before they can do damage. Picture this. Someone asks, "Why are you being so sensitive?" And suddenly you're defending yourself instead of addressing their behavior. Or they say, "You trust me, right?" And you feel guilty for having doubts. These aren't random questions. They're calculated moves in a game you didn't know you were playing. But when you understand what Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus taught about human nature, these same questions become early warning systems. Instead of being manipulated, you become unmovable. Instead of doubting yourself, you see clearly through their tactics. By the end of this exploration, you'll never be anyone's psychological pawn again. But first, let me show you how deep this manipulation really goes. Why are you being so sensitive? This question sounds like concern, but it's actually the first bullet fired by every gaslighter. Hidden inside those words isn't curiosity, it's accusation. What they're really saying is, "You're weak, you're imagining things. The problem isn't me, it's you." But here's what they don't want you to realize. Sensitivity is your early warning system. The financial analyst who spots small inconsistencies in the books gets mocked as paranoid, but later proves a multi-million-dollar fraud. The wife who senses subtle changes in her husband's behavior gets dismissed as overreacting, but discovers the betrayal months later. Therefore, when someone attacks your sensitivity, they're trying to disable your psychological radar. Epictetus taught, "No one can hurt you without your permission." But notice what he didn't say. He never said you should ignore your observations to make others comfortable. Therefore, a person who truly values you will never shame your awareness. When someone asks, "Why are you being so sensitive?" the untrained mind rushes to defend. But Epictetus taught us that the wise person doesn't react. They respond with precision. Therefore, you pause, maintain eye contact, and calmly say, "I'm not being sensitive, I'm being observant." Does that make you uncomfortable? One sentence, but watch how it works. The manipulator expected you to shrink. They never expected you to stand taller. Therefore, their mask begins to slip, because liars thrive on your self-doubt, not your clarity. But sensitivity isn't the only weapon they use. The second question is even more dangerous, because it sounds like love. If you've ever been called too sensitive, but knew you were seeing something real, comment, "My awareness is my strength." You trust me, right? This question masquerades as intimacy, but it's actually a trap. Because anyone who demands trust instead of earning it has already revealed their hand. Think about it. Trustworthy people don't need to ask for your faith. Their actions speak louder than their words. But when someone looks you in the eye and insists, "You trust me, right?" they're really saying, "Don't think, don't question. Just hand me the keys to your mind." Seneca warned us, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Manipulators understand this truth backwards. They use that question to end your curiosity, to make you feel guilty for being cautious, to convince you that asking for proof makes you disloyal. But caution isn't betrayal. Caution is wisdom. Picture the business partner who won't show you the financial records, but leans in and says, "Trust me." Or the romantic partner who guards their phone like state secrets but repeats, "Don't you trust me?" They're not building trust, they're demanding blind faith. Therefore, blind faith becomes the breeding ground of betrayal. The Stoics practiced what they called apatheia, not letting emotion override reason. When faced with, "You trust me, right?" the Stoic doesn't panic or defend. They pause, breathe, and reply, "Trust is earned through consistency. Are you asking me to ignore my judgment?" That single line flips the entire frame. The spotlight moves from your supposed disloyalty to their demand for unearned faith. Therefore, a liar will stumble, change the subject, or lash out, but a person of integrity won't be offended. They'll simply keep showing you through actions that they deserve trust. Remember, trust isn't a gift handed out under pressure. It's a fortress built stone by stone through time, truth, and consistency. But the third question is where manipulators get truly clever. Are you accusing me of something? This question is psychological warfare disguised as innocence. You raise a concern. You notice something doesn't add up. You ask a reasonable question, but suddenly, instead of getting answers, you face a sharp counterattack. Wait, are you accusing me of something? Without realizing it, you're no longer the observer asking questions. You're the villain on trial. The spotlight has shifted from their behavior to your supposed wrongdoing. Therefore, this tactic forces you into defense mode where you rush to explain yourself, backpedal, and say, no, that's not what I meant. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But Stoic wisdom doesn't mean passive acceptance. It means refusing to play the game on someone else's terms. Think about a courtroom. If the guilty can make the judge apologize, the trial collapses. Therefore, that's exactly what this question is designed to do. Real-world examples hit hard. A boss confronted about missing funds snaps. "Are you accusing me of stealing?" A partner questioned about secrecy demands. "Are you accusing me of cheating?" In both cases, the goal is identical, turning your search for truth into an attack you must defend. The Stoic doesn't rush to fill uncomfortable silence. When someone asks, "Are you accusing me of something?" you wait 2, maybe 3 seconds. You maintain eye contact. Then you calmly reply, "Should I be?" 3 words, but those 3 words flip the pressure back where it belongs. They pierce through the performance because liars expect panic. They never expect power. Therefore, inquiry doesn't need to apologize for seeking clarity. But the fourth question might be the most insidious because it sounds like wounded love. Comment below if you've had someone flip the script when you ask legitimate questions. I don't fall for reversals anymore. Would I ever lie to you? This question is poison wrapped in velvet. It sounds tender, almost wounded, as if you've insulted them by doubting. But ask yourself, why would someone need to ask such a question unless they sensed you were close to discovering something they'd rather keep hidden? Would I ever lie to you isn't really a question. It's theater. It's a performance designed to paint them as noble and you as cruel for even imagining otherwise. Therefore, it's not about honesty. It's about manufacturing guilt. Because if they can make you feel guilty for doubting, you'll stop asking questions that matter. Seneca taught, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." But notice, a person of genuine integrity doesn't need to convince you they're incapable of lying. They let their actions speak day after day without fanfare, without performance, without desperate pleas for blind faith. Think about real life. The partner who hides their messages, then says, "Would I ever lie to you?" The colleague who dodges accountability but insists, "Come on, would I really lie?" Therefore, the more passionately they plead innocence, the more you should question what lies beneath the performance. When someone asks, "Would I ever lie to you?" the untrained mind scrambles to reassure them, but the Stoic pauses. They let the silence work. Then they reply, "That's not the question. The question is, would I know if you did?" In that instant, you shift the entire dynamic. Liars thrive in fog where you're blinded by doubt, but your response switches on the floodlight. Therefore, once the light is on, shadows can no longer hide what they're protecting. Remember, honest people don't fear questions about their honesty. Only liars do. But the fifth question is their final card, the desperation play. Can't we just move on? This is the last card in the manipulator's deck. When denial fails, when distraction fails, they turn to exhaustion. Can't we just move on? Sounds like peace, like closure. But look deeper. It's not about resolution. It's about escape. What they're really saying is, I don't want accountability. I don't want to face what happened. I just need you too tired to keep digging. Therefore, many lies survive not because the liar outsmarts the truth, but because the truth seeker grows weary and gives up. The Stoics knew this tactic well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice he never added, "unless it's inconvenient." For the Stoic, authenticity has no deadline. It doesn't fade just because someone wants to move on. Think of real examples. A company caught in scandal begs employees, let's not dwell on the past, let's focus on the future. A spouse exposed in betrayal pleads, why keep talking about it? Let's move forward. But in both cases, the plea isn't for healing, it's for silence. Therefore, they want to bury what still festers in the dark. When someone asks, can't we just move on? The Stoic breathes and calmly answers, I'll move on when I understand what happened, not before. That single sentence anchors you in reality. It tells the liar you cannot be rushed, that your peace is built on clarity, not fatigue. Liars hate this because they thrive on your exhaustion, but when you refuse to surrender, when you stand calmly in certainty, their game is over. Therefore, moving forward isn't about speed, it's about honesty. If you refuse to be rushed past the truth, comment, I move forward through clarity, not escape. But knowing these 5 questions is only the beginning. Now you need to develop what the Stoics called philosophical immunity. Building Stoic immunity. Now you know the 5 weapons, but recognition isn't enough. You need what the Stoics called philosophical immunity. The ability to remain unmoved when others try to shake your foundation. Because liars thrive on one thing above all else, your emotional reaction. They don't need facts or logic. They only need you to lose your balance, to doubt what you've seen, to prioritize their comfort over your clarity. Therefore, the moment you understand this dynamic, you hold the key to your own liberation. Epictetus taught the most important distinction in philosophy. Some things are in our control, others are not. This isn't just ancient wisdom. It's your psychological shield. When they try to guilt, you remember, their feelings are not your responsibility. When they attack your sensitivity, remember, your awareness belongs to you alone. When they demand unearned trust, remember, your judgment is yours to give or withhold. The Stoic doesn't react at the manipulator's pace, like standing in a storm, where winds howl and rain lashes. But inside you remain unmoved. Your stillness becomes their accountability mirror. First principle, separate their urgency from your judgment. Manipulators create artificial time pressure. Decide now. Don't overthink it. Just trust me. But wisdom operates on its own timeline. Therefore you respond, I'll decide when I have enough information. Second principle, own your observations without apology. When you notice something doesn't add up, that observation belongs to you. You don't need permission to see clearly. You don't need consensus to trust your judgment. Third principle, let silence do the work. When they ask these manipulation questions, they expect immediate reaction, but the Stoic pause is devastating to their strategy. Therefore, silence becomes your most powerful response. But there's one more layer, how to spot the manipulator before they even ask these questions. Reading the early warning signs. Before manipulators ask these 5 questions, they reveal themselves through patterns. The person who gets defensive when you ask simple questions, the one who changes the subject when you want clarity, the individual who makes you feel guilty for having standards. These are early warning signals that someone operates from deception rather than authenticity. Seneca wrote, every man is in bondage to fear who depends upon the whims of fortune. But manipulators depend on something more predictable than fortune, They depend on your predictable responses to their calculated provocations. Therefore, when you stop being predictable, their entire strategy collapses. Here's how you test someone's character before they can manipulate you. Ask a simple, reasonable question about something important to you. Then observe their response pattern. Do they answer directly? Do they ask for clarification? Or do they immediately deflect, get defensive, or make you feel bad for asking? A person of integrity welcomes questions because they have nothing to hide. Their responses feel clean, direct, without hidden agendas. But a manipulator will start showing their hand immediately, through deflection, through emotional manipulation, through making your reasonable question seem unreasonable. Watch how they handle information requests. Can you show me the receipts? What time did you leave? Who else was there? Simple questions that honest people answer simply. But notice how manipulators respond. They provide partial information. They get offended by the question itself, or they turn your request for clarity into evidence of your character flaws. The Stoic doesn't wait for manipulation to begin. They create conditions where authenticity can flourish and deception cannot survive. Therefore, your questions become a mirror that reflects their true nature back to you. But what happens when you discover you've been caught in their web for months or years? Liberation and transformation. If you're realizing you've been manipulated by these questions for months or years, the Stoic path isn't about anger or revenge. It's about clear-eyed assessment and decisive action that serves your long-term well-being and psychological freedom. First, acknowledge what happened without shame. Manipulation works because manipulators are skilled at exploiting normal human psychology, not because you were weak or naive. Even the wisest person can be caught off guard by someone they trusted. Seneca himself was betrayed by people he considered friends. Second, document the patterns without emotion. Write down the specific questions they used, how you felt afterward, and what you did in response. This creates clarity and prevents you from gaslighting yourself later when they try to rewrite history. Third, establish new boundaries based on evidence, not hope. You don't owe explanations to people who use your explanations against you. You don't owe second chances to people who haven't earned first chances. You don't owe emotional labor to people who manipulate your emotions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is remove yourself from relationships built on deception. Marcus Aurelius faced this reality with courtiers who tried to manipulate him. He wrote, "Be like the